Welcome to Under Two Capes. I'm Jared, and I am joined by Nick Gibson of the Phoenix Press. Welcome to Under Two Capes.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, so Nick shot me a DM last night about coming on the show because he has a comic book that he wants to promote. So we're very happy to do that. I love when independents come on and talk about stuff. But first, I have a couple of questions I ask every new guest. So, favorite superhero movie?
Okay, I thought you were gonna say superhero. Okay, you kind of threw me a curveball there.
That's next.
Well, I already have the next one lined up, but to answer your first question, I'd probably say Batman 1989 is the first one that comes to mind.
That's a fantastic one. I love that
I'm
one.
a huge Keaton fan.
Yeah, I don't know how we feel about him coming back in the Flash, because I feel like plus the fact they're like, he's the new Batman. He's too old to be the new Batman.
I mean, if you're doing a Batman Beyond and it's set in the Keaton verse with Keaton as the old Bruce Wayne, I'm on board.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm buying my ticket right now kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So, favorite superhero?
Nightwing.
Oh, that's a good one. I love Nightwing. He was also a pretty decent Batman after Final Crisis.
Oh yeah, the battle after Battle for the Cowl and whatnot. Yeah, mm-hmm. I read a bunch of that stuff. That's a really interesting era of comics. It's like it's like a 2-year gap between Battle for the Cowl and then the Flashpoint. So it's like really, because you got like the Red Hood storyline where the Red Robin storyline where Tim Drake is in Europe, and like Tim Drake is dealing with Ra's al Ghul, and Ra's al Ghul at one point calls Tim Drake detective, which is like the ultimate sign of respect. I thought that was kind of interesting. Then obviously Damian and you know whatnot. I thought it's a pretty interesting time.
Yeah, it was, and I feel like Nightwing is the logical choice for whoever would like replace Bruce as Batman, because I always felt like, yes, Bruce has Damian, but I feel like Batman and Nightwing are a little more aligned on the don't kill people rule, even though I fully believe that Batman kills people. That's just me.
Well, I definitely agree with you. Dick Grayson is the best choice, but I also feel like Tim Drake is kind of like a good second choice.
Yeah, that's true. I'll give you that.
Tim and Dick kind of represent two sides of the same bat coin, if you will. Whereas Dick Grayson is the better fighter. Like, in fact, some people said he's like a slightly better fighter than Bruce, whereas Tim is the detective. Tim is like almost as good of a detective as Bruce Wayne. In fact, Ra's al Ghul recognizes him as detective. You know, it's like they're both two sides of the same Batman.
That's true. I agree with you on that. All right, next question: DC or Marvel? Which is better?
DC.
Yes, thank you. There you go. You didn't even hesitate on that one. I love that.
I've always been a Marvel fanboy. Like, okay, I effed up there. I've always been a DC fanboy. Marvel's cool. Like, I don't hate on Marvel. You know, X-Men, Daredevil. You know, the movies are cool. But for me, I've always been a DC fanboy. You know, Batman, Teen Titans, Legion of Superheroes, and whatnot. You know, DC for life.
Yeah. Plus, I grew up on the Justice League Unlimited cartoon, so it was kind of required. Right. I'm like, and plus, when you look at, the theme song for that, I was like, oh my gosh. But it's like when you look at the library, considering like animation, DC is just completely blows Marvel out of the water.
DC on TV and animation is objectively better than anything Marvel has done. Like, don't get me wrong, Marvel has done some good TV shows like the Yoast-verse stuff, and you want to go back to the 90s, X-Men the animated series is good, Spider-Man, but in the 90s, you had Batman the animated series, arguably one of the best cartoons ever. Superman the animated series, like the entire DCAU. You know, Teen Titans in the 2000s, you know, Justice League.
Young Justice now. It's like, oh, jeez. I look at all this, and plus they even had their own like animated movie universe that was loosely based on the New 52, which I think was fantastic.
Oh, look at those movies, were so good. I love those movies.
Except my only problem was like in the Batman Hush movie where they changed Hush, but besides that, because most of them are pretty much the storyline. Like Justice League War was pretty much the first volume of New 52 Justice League. Like exactly. Yeah. except for they replaced Aquaman with Shazam, which I'm like, well, that's quite a substitution there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree that DC definitely has, like, in my opinion, DC has better characters, storylines, and such. Plus, at least for me, I've always been a fan of like Greek myth, and the Justice League seem more consistent with those themes, like the League, or basically the gods of Olympus. And again, I still like Marvel, but DC has that place.
See, in my opinion, the biggest problem with Marvel is it's very top heavy in terms of like it has a good roster of like A-list heroes.
Yeah.
And it has like a few B-listers here and there, but DC has an A-list, B-list, C-list, D-list, and they're all interesting. Like for example, like Young Justice and it's like Young Justice and Teen Titans are like a C-list, B-list, but they're just as important as the A-tier characters.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Plus,
you never in Marvel have we seen a book like Teen Titans, which is made of a B-list and C-list characters and a few D-listers, where it's literally the most important DC book in the 80s. Like, it was going right toe and toe with X-Men.
It was, and I believe a few times even surpassed X-Men.
Exactly.
It's plus the fact I just find DC storylines a little more entertaining and less kind of infuriating, because let me put it this way, I sort of formed my current opinion about Marvel about the time when they made Captain America a Hydra agent. I was like, yeah, exactly. And I was like, I'm just gonna go read DC where they haven't ruined Superman, and then I was like, well, Superman they go back and forth on, but luckily there's more good, I think, with Superman, because he's my favorite character. Than there's bad, even though there's a lot of bad with Captain America, particularly nowadays.
Yeah, Superman is one of those characters where he doesn't get really many good stories, but when someone just gets Superman, when they write a good story, it's literally one of the best stories ever made.
It's like also Superman,
or Superman Red Son, or American Alien or something like that. Like, there are really good Superman, but it's like Superman is kind of like is literally one of the hardest characters to write, because he's this nigh on powerful being, and so like you could have him punch Darkseid again, which that's cool, but like you can only pull from that well so many times. Like, I think that's kind of one of the reasons why Batman is so popular, is he can be shot, he can be beaten, he can, there's kind of a risk with what Batman does. Like, yeah, he's smart enough and prep time, and dark, like, but the thing is, when Batman does those things where, like, one of my favorite moments in a DC animated universe is in Superman Batman Apocalypse.
Yes,
the one Supergirl. You probably know the moment I'm about to say. When Batman is literally going up against Darkseid, and he's like, "I activated all your Hellspawn."
Yes,
you're bluffing, and he like names the codes, and then like he's like, "I could kill you," and then like Darkseid smiles. He's like, your friends would not have had the will to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And he gains Darkseid's respect. A mere mortal gains Darkseid's respect.
Yeah,
that is like the quintessential Batman moment to me right there.
Yeah, you believe that Batman's probably gonna mess you up.
Like, he has the stones to do that, and it's just, to me, that's Batman. That moment is Batman in a nutshell. Sure, he's physically intimidating, but only really on a street level, But the reason why he can hang with the gods is because he has the intellect, the will, the fortitude to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, exactly. As in the case of Tower of Babel. What's your favorite comic book storyline?
I'd probably say War Games, Hush. Hush is definitely a good one. I could just name a bunch of Batman ones, like Nightfall. I really like the Nightfall storyline, where Bruce has to like earn back he can't just put on the Batman suit and say I'm Batman again. He has to earn back the mantle of the Bat. The stuff with John Paul Valley.
Yeah.
Death of Superman, honestly, if you read it again, it actually still kind of holds up. It's actually very poignant.
It does. My favorite would have to be Justice League a Darkseid War, because you have Darkseid versus the Anti-Monitor, and then the Justice League get god powers. And my favorite is like Batman on the knowledge chair, and he's basically like, and he turns into even more of an a-hole.
How that's possible, I do not know.
I never know, but somehow he figured it. He got the intellect to do that. And I love where he visits Joe Chill, and then he knows all these details about the death of his parents. And Joe Chill's like, how do you know this? He lifts up the cowl, because I'm Bruce Wayne. That was just so good.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That reminds me of a really good Justice League moment. During the Thanagarian invasion of Earth, where Flash is like, "Hey, I like you guys, but I don't trust you," and he's like, "Barry Allen, Clark Kent, blah blah blah," and he's like, "Bruce Wayne," and he's like, "That's not fair."
I love that's such a Batman thing to do. My favorite is when they did that in the animated movie, and the Green Lantern's like, "Who's Bruce Wayne?"
How does he not know who Bruce Wayne is?
Well, he's in space all the time, so that could be a way to understand. But still, it's like I see what you're saying. There was a little plot hole there, but I love where in the beginning of that movie, he's like, "Okay, so can you fly? No. Super strength? No. Wait, you're just doing the bat suit, aren't you?" And then Batman just turns him and just smiles.
And he's holding the Green Lantern.
You weren't concentrating. What do you think is the most underrated superhero movie or TV series?
Smallville.
Yes.
Especially the first 4 seasons of Smallville. Like during the high school years.
It's kind of slow, but I see the value in it.
I mean, even the post high school years when they went full comic book, it's really good. Like the effects, honestly, were so ahead of their time. Like they did like Matrix style effects in 2000 on a TV show budget, and they're just really good. In my opinion, the effects kind of hold up today.
My problem with Smallville is that so you have like the most D tier characters from DC show up in that, but Batman.
Well, they're kind of limited.
But Batman and Wonder Woman, I know. But Batman and Wonder Woman never show up. His best friends never show up. I get that there was like behind the scenes stuff on why they couldn't bring him in, but I'm like, it's a Superman series.
They wanted to bring in a young Bruce Wayne.
I know. A young Bruce Wayne or a young Diana. You could do this. This is really easy.
I do have another answer though for underrated TV show. X-Men Evolution.
Okay, yeah, I think that's good. That's good.
I really like
the theme song is so badass.
Oh yes. I really like how they reinterpreted everything for like a high school. They made all the conflicts a lot smaller. Like instead of Senator Kelly, you had Principal Kelly. And I feel like they did a really good job of taking how big the X-Men universe was and really compressing it down to a lot smaller scale. And I feel like they translated the characters really well to like a high school kind of era. And I feel like they kind of did that, did that really well. Translate these adult characters and adult storylines into a more, smaller form.
Plus, that's where we got X-23. So one of the coolest characters, in particular, if you've seen the Logan movie.
Yes. I love that movie. It's a tearjerker, but
it's so good. My underrated movie would be Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, the ultimate cut. You have to go with the ultimate cut.
Wait, you mean the only version I've ever seen?
The only version that exists? Yes, of course. I mean that version, exactly. That's why I always tell people whenever they tell me about how horrible BVS is, I'm like, have you seen the 3-hour version? They'll say no, and I'm like, that explains it.
Yeah, that's I went straight to the Ultimate Edition. I was like, why are people so mad about this? Like, I don't really see a problem with it. It's fine.
So do you know? Here's an example of what they kept. What's not in the theatrical cut. They took out the explanation as to why Superman didn't see the bomb in the wheelchair. So it's like all of a sudden he just didn't see it.
Lead, right?
Yeah, they took out the lead part. And I'm like, yeah, why would you take this out? It makes Superman look like an idiot. I don't understand. Yeah. And then series.
Also, didn't they take out the part where the guy didn't know that there was a bomb on it, or Lois went to his apartment? And it's like, oh, he's got a full set of groceries. Why the fuck would someone buy a full set of groceries if they're planning on killing themselves at there,
Yeah, they left that out too. I'm like, this is really like, that's my problem. People, whenever people bash Zack Snyder, I'm like, well, it's because a lot of his movies have been like chopped up and sabotaged by Warner Brothers.
See, the only problem with Zack Snyder is he's not very efficient with the storytelling.
That's true.
like that's really like he tells good stories, and like I'm even a person who likes Sucker Punch. Like I'm a person.
I've never seen it. I probably should watch it.
I love Watchmen. I think Watchmen's an amazing movie. I actually like Zack Snyder. You know, and I think Superman Returns, Man of Steel was a good movie. You know, but like Zack Snyder's the kind of person where he needs 4 hours to tell a story because he's not that good at like efficiently telling a story. He can only really do one thing at a time because Zack Snyder, while a competent storyteller and he can tell a competent story, he's mostly a visual storyteller. He's like audio visual. That's where his mind works. And he's amazing at that. You know, and he can tell a good story. He's competent at it, but he needs time to tell a story, whereas other writers can get stuff more done with less.
That's true. I'll give you that. That's
a half fault. I'd say half.
Yeah, because as a DC fan, I like more DC. So when I saw the Snyder Cut was 4 hours, I'm like, oh goody.
Yeah,
I've seen it. I'm the guy that has seen it 8 times. So
my only real like, obviously the length is kind of an issue with Justice League, but like if they would have made it into a mini series, it would have been better. Is how they handle Martian Manhunter. They just kind of threw him in there. He doesn't really do anything for the movie. It's like, oh, hey, it's Martian Manhunter. Like, it would have been really nice to have Martian Manhunter on the team for Faces Steppenwolf. Like, seriously, Martian Manhunter's a freaking powerhouse. Like, he would have really helped with Steppenwolf.
That's true. And I love how the end, the only reason why he was at that end part, because that was supposed to be Green Lantern, but Warner Brothers said he couldn't use Jon Stewart. And I'm like, you don't want to use one of the greatest Green Lanterns of all time. And the reason,
this is kind of, sorry, this makes me mad. Okay. It's like they these studios, they want diversity. Okay, you want a black Green Lantern? Jon Stewart. And the thing is, I could argue Jon Stewart is probably more of a well-known Green Lantern now than Hal Jordan.
Yeah,
because of Justice League. Because 10 years ago, you had a cartoon that was really freaking amazing, where Hal Jordan only appeared once. You know, and it was Jon Stewart this whole time, and he was a great character, and people love Jon Stewart. And people, I say, associate Jon Stewart Green Lantern more than Hal Jordan.
I agree with that.
You know, you can make the argument at least.
Yeah.
So having Jon Stewart be Green Lantern would have been perfectly fine.
Yeah. Their reasoning for it's fine. Their reasoning for that was because they're making their Green Lantern TV series and they thought it was going to confuse people, even though they said multiverse. So I'm like, I don't think you.
Meanwhile, we have 3 different Batmans running around.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's like that old Princess Bride quote. You keep saying that word. I don't think you know what it means.
By the Green Lantern series, or is it like them they keep trying to set up John Diggle as Green Lantern, but they keep kind of like pulling back at the last minute.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, guys, just make a decision. You even said that his surname is Stewart. So I'm like, just do it at this point. I think it is. I think they're not confident in the CW style VFX work because of what happened with the Ryan Reynolds movie.
The Ryan Reynolds movie really isn't even that bad.
No, but the VFX in certain parts are like,
But that's not really, I mean, it's the VFX department's fault, not really necessarily the movie fault of the movie. Because like the story was decent. I felt like the villain was, I mean, Parallax being the big bad, it's kind of like having Darkseid be the first villain.
Yeah.
You're kind of, shooting yourself in the foot.
They should have done Sinestro.
Well, they set up Sinestro. Like, I don't mind Sinestro being a mentor, turning evil, have him be the second movie villain. Like, that's fine. That's actually probably better because you're setting him up.
Mm-hmm. That's what
like literally the post. Yeah, and that would have been fine. Great, because I think the Sinestro they had was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And plus it gives it more of a weight because he gave Sinestro time to breathe, people get to know him, to realize he's kind of a ends justify the means, by any means necessary kind of person, which is a good character trait. It makes him more of a multi-dimensional villain. And I thought that version of Sinestro would have been really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I mean, that's beyond the fact that, like, yeah, here's how I know we would have gotten more movies. That was supposed to start the DCEU.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, it's because I recently rewatched it, and it's like they're establishing so much stuff, like Argus and stuff. It's like
Amanda Waller. Amanda Waller's in it.
Amanda Waller, I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing there. It's like when I saw the movie in theaters, I wasn't as versed in comic book knowledge. So I don't know who Amanda Waller is. So now that I see it, I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing here. Any minute they could just have the ring fly by Krypton. Just saying.
I mean, one could say Amanda Waller is kind of the Nick Fury of the DC universe.
A little more like probably less good Nick Fury, and that says a lot.
I mean, she does kind of fill the Nick Fury role to a key, but she is more sinister, I'd say.
Yeah, she's very more sinister. She's the one person that if you're on the Suicide Squad, I believe she'll just blow your head for just because you talk back to her. Boom.
That's actually, I loved Amanda Waller on Justice League because like she's the only one who could intimidate Batman.
Yeah, I know. I'm like,
I fear no man, but that woman, she scares me.
Yeah, it's like Batman shows up while she's in the shower and she just shrugs it off. I'm like, okay. But anyway,
she's like, okay, there's a Batman in she called the Exterminator.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's the end of my questions right now. Now on to your book. So first off, I checked out the trailer for it. It looks really, really cool. So tell us a little bit about your book, the plot, the inspiration. Just go ahead.
So as far as inspiration wise, I'm kind of drawing between a mixture of Matrix, Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell. My goal with this was kind of merge East meets West with like Western comic books with Japanese animation and manga, kind of mush these things together, kind of add my own spices and whatnot, and a pretty BA concoction kind of spewed out, and I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah, I love it. So I love the idea of the plot where we're like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like a Japanese samurai and his girlfriend get like sent to the near future, to the far future, right? That's such a good idea. That is such a good idea.
Yeah, and it's got some twists and turns, you know, like the first issue, some things happen, some people die, Hero's left on his own for his own devices, and you know, and the second issue kind of falls in with this lady named Tyler, and I had this like really cool dynamic set up between them where it's like he can kick the butts of like 50 men, but like he doesn't know how to navigate the social currents because like he's, you know, feudal Japan. It like literally in the second issue he decides to strike out on his own and instantly is harassed by the cops, and he's about to get arrested before Tyler talks him down and greases their palms a little bit, you know. And so it's kind of like a, you know, he knows violence, she's of the streets kind of thing, you know, and like, you know, they kind of complement each other, and so he's gonna train her to be a samurai and whatnot. And I like to envision these first two issues as like a 2-part TV pilot, and then like going forward from issue 3 onward, things will be a little bit more episodic, but like I'll have like little bits here and there progress the plot forward. So that's kind of the format I got going forward.
Awesome. It looks great. And I actually love the black and white art form because I feel like there's not enough black and white comics in there. I mean, in the current thing, because it's such a great like idea. I know Marvel and DC do like their occasional one, but it's more like a half measure.
More like a novelty thing, kind of anything else.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they had Wolverine like black, red, and white, which is a cool idea, but I'm like, I want an actual black and white comic book.
Like you want to do a black, white, and red run of Wolverine for, you know, at least go up to a graphic novel. That'd be cool.
Yeah, but it's like they just treat it like, okay, it's black and white now. I'm like, and
exactly.
And I noticed that you on your site, you also mentioned that you were drawing a lot of inspiration from manga. And what we know nowadays is that manga apparently is outselling American comic books.
Yeah, so that's it's kind of intentional, them going kind of a manga route, because I'm trying to like tap into that vein a little bit, because manga is just kicking comics butt, and most people just don't know why. I'd argue, you know, I'd say it's because manga is telling good stories. You know, there's a, you know, clean jumping off points. And it's they're selling what's appealing to people, you know. And to be perfectly blunt, modern comics aren't really that appealing to a lot of people, and that's why they're not selling that well. Versus manga, appeals to a lot of people and thus it sells. It's really simple economics, honestly.
Yeah, that's true, because I have trouble because people come to me and it's like, okay, so Jared, I want to read Batman. Where should I start? And I'm like,
well, there's this number one, there's that number one, there's Detective Comics 27. You can go back all there's like almost 100 years of comics to go through, and it's not just. Whereas manga, it's like okay, let's talk about what I want to let's say you want to watch Naruto. Sure, it's an 800 episodes, but it's episode 1 to episode 800. It's at least a straight line. Whereas with Batman, there's Detective Comics, which is like stop and start throughout the years, and then there's these side issues. There's like the Bat Family stuff. Like there's so many there's like at any one time, if you want to follow the Batman story, you probably have to read 5 different books a month.
Yeah, and that's a lot of my issue with a lot of comic book events, because like take for instance like Death Metal, fantastic event if you just read the main like books, you're only getting half the story, and then they add in like over 20 tie-ins. I'm like, monetarily and energy wise, I can't do this.
See, that's why if I ever do an event as a creator, I'll have like the main I really like what Crisis on Infinite Earth did back in '84, where like they had the main storyline and every comic book crossed over with it, but it was more side stories. You didn't need, like, for example, Teen Titans. Sure, they talked about the crisis going on. They maybe had their own stories linked to it, but you didn't need to read Teen Titans to know what was going on with Crisis. Sure, it might have added to it, but it was not in any way necessary. And that's something I definitely plan on doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I like Justice League Darkseid War a lot, is that the only tie-ins were like small self-contained stories of the Justice League, like having these new powers, like Superman being the god of strength, but Batman visiting Joe Chill. There were self-contained stories. So if you wanted to read it, it's there. But it's not required to understand the storyline. It's like that's my problem, and I think more so on Marvel's part, because Marvel, I can't even count how many tie-ins to like say King in Black there were.
When you have to release an infographic saying read these stories this week in this order, you done effed up.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, it should be like, it shouldn't be a chore for me to enjoy comic books, which I still do. I mean, I'll read I only have the main storyline for the first Metal event. And I acknowledge I'm not getting the full story, but it's like, as long as you like acknowledge, okay, that happened in tie-in, I'm good. I don't need to like read an entire like encyclopedia of tie-in information.
Yeah.
It's really annoying, but I appreciate that you have pledged not to do that. And if you do, I will reference this episode and call you out on Twitter.
Yes, by all means, clip this and throw this in my face. By all means, including this one. In fact, I'm going to give you a clip right now. Future Nick, if you do exactly against what you're saying, frick you. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
By the way, those are my index fingers, not my.
That's fine. No, it's fine. It's fine. But so I wanted to ask you. So why do you think that manga is outselling like traditional American comic books? Because you would think Batman, Superman, to a lesser extent Wonder Woman, you think they would be like the most popular books around, but it doesn't seem like they are.
Well, here's the thing: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, they are the most popular characters around. The merchandise sales, the movie draws certainly view that out, and the general populace knows about these characters, but when it comes to the comics, I think a lot of it is they're creating characters that they're creating stories that people don't want to care about. Like the MCU had the golden opportunity to where these like for example, Iron Man, biggest character in movies, at the moment, and they turned it into Riri Williams.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, or like you like the Hulk. Oh, I like Bruce Banner. I want to read about Bruce Banner. Oh, Bruce Banner is the Hulk, but Amadeus Cho is. It's like they swapped out all these characters, and it's like they come, like you have these new people come into a comic store. They just saw Age of Ultron or or whatever. They want to read about their favorite characters and they can't, and it's like, it's like, I want to read about Tony Stark, Iron Man. Oh, Tony Stark isn't Iron Man, but Riri Williams is Ironheart, and he's just as good. And they're like, I don't even know who Riri Williams is. Thank you. And then they never come again.
Yeah, it's like, why should I care about these random characters when I'm coming here after watching, like, say, Thor? Why should I care that Jane Foster is Thor at this point? It should be Thor the God of Thunder.
Jane Foster hasn't been in a Thor movie since Dark World in almost 10 years. Like, I like Natalie Portman as an actress, Star Wars, of course. I thought she was decent in the Thor movies, but like literally she got a one hand wave mention in Thor Ragnarok that they broke up.
She kind of showed up in Endgame.
She did?
Yeah, remember they had to get the reality stone from her.
Oh yeah, but that was that was deleted scenes from Dark World. Like, that was unused footage. But still, I get what you're saying. Technically, yeah, she does show up. So yeah, that is a point. But like, I don't know. And plus there's the whole confusion of there's Thor, and then, because here's the thing about people who get about the hammer. Can possess the powers of Thor.
Yeah. Like
when Captain America wielded Mjolnir, did he become Thor? No. Did he use the powers of Thor? Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Wielding Mjolnir does not make you Thor. It gives you the powers of Thor.
Exactly.
Like, it's like,
and they call her the Mighty Thor. Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay. You could just come up with another name and we're good there. That's my problem. The only problem I have with Miles Morales is that he has the exact same powers as Spider-Man, but they still call him Spider-Man, even though they moved him into the main universe where there's already a Spider-Man.
I think they finally give him the name Shadow Spider, which is
that's so much better.
Yeah, I mean, it fits because of his invisibility powers and whatnot.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Plus, it like Ghost Spider, Ghost Spider was kind of taken.
Yeah.
With, which they kind of have that same problem. It's like Spider-Gwen. What do you call her? Ghost Spider. Okay, she's white. She looks kind of like a ghost. Sure. She's graceful and floats. Whatever. Sure. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But and then going to what DC does, their idea is, okay, so let's kill the Justice League and let's replace them with the characters that can't sell their own books, except for Yara Flor. Yara Flor can sell her own book because it's actually really good.
It's like, okay, we can't make Clark Kent gay, but let's age up John Kent for some reason and let's make him gay and then make him Superman. No, it's not Clark Kent Superman. It's Jonathan, and then no one cares.
And you notice, what was the headline on the Newsday article? Superman is bi, not Superman's son. Which, to be clear,
which is exactly what they knew would happen. They knew that would happen.
It was, to be clear, I could care less if there's a gay or bi character in a comic book. I'm totally fine with that. Just my problem is that when it's exploited to sell a comic book,
it's stunt casting. It's all it is.
Yeah,
stunt
exactly.
Casting.
Plus,
like
when they make the character unlikable.
Like, for example, they made North Star gay in the gay in Alpha Flight. Yeah. And that was fine. And then they did an event where he married someone, like the first gay wedding in comics. Like, and honestly, like when I saw that, I was like, oh, North Star's getting married. Good for him. I wasn't mad. I wasn't like whatever. Yeah. I didn't really care too much because I wasn't really a fan of North Star, but I knew who North Star was because I was aware that he was like the first gay character. I was like, oh, he's getting married. Good for him, and like they're doing wedding invitations. Like, I was kind of indifferent. Like, I did get pissed. I'm like, but that was kind of where it was like earned. It was like an earned thing. Like, because North Star is a character. He'd been in the comics for like 20 years at that point, and he got married. And he, like, honestly, I think it's fitting that North Star, the first gay character in comics, gets the first gay wedding. I think that's fair. I think that's a good tribute.
Plus, and then it's like, my problem also is like when Warner Brothers like wants to say, okay, so we're gonna have like a Black Superman movie, and then we're gonna race swap Clark Kent when they have two other Supermen that are just as compelling characters. And like, let me put it this way, if you read Earth 2, you're a fan of Val Zod. And it's like everyone loves Calvin Ellis, and even Michael B. Jordan was like, "No, I would do Calvin Ellis. What are you talking about, Clark Kent?" He gets it.
It's like you're doing a Flashpoint movie. You bring in this, like, honestly, the woman who plays Supergirl, she does not like look like a Supergirl to me. You know, just like Ruby Rose at least looked like Batwoman. Like, honestly, physically, honestly, like, the thing that kind of pisses me off is like the whole Batwoman being a lesbian. I don't really care because she's somewhat of an interesting character. They at least do something with her character.
If you're a cool character, I could care less who you sleep with.
And like they did the Elseworlds crossover, and they gave her a great showing in the Elseworlds. Like they introduced the whatever, I can't remember, Kane, and and then she became Batwoman, and she had a great showing as Batwoman in that. And then like, from what I hear, the show was just really bad, to the point where even Ruby Rose left after the first season. He was like, "Peace out, bees, I'm out." Yeah, I'm out. Yeah, I still haven't watched it because, again, I don't watch CW shows, but except for Superman and Lois, which is a delight. But it's like I've heard horror stories, I've seen more or less summaries of the plots, and I'm like, I know Batwoman is a good character, so I feel like she's being wasted. It's like they're trying to make a Batman show, but not make a Batman show at the same time. Exactly. Oh, my other issue, going back to like it has to be earned, when they had Iceman come out, it was like out of nowhere when a character I am so mad that up. No. What really pisses me off? Jean Grey mind raping. Oh yes, exactly, that too. Like, literally, the worst way. It's like she literally, like, it's not that Bobby was gay. She put the suggestion into his mind that he's gay. Yeah. So, because here's the thing. People can have gay tendencies in their head. That doesn't make them gay. People can have, because we like to put each other in boxes. You're either gay or you're straight, when it's really more of a spectrum. Some people are like really, really gay. Some people are really, really straight. Some people are a little bit in between. It's like, just because you have some thoughts or whatever doesn't make you fully gay. Like, you can look at a guy and say, "Man, that guy's hot," but you never think about sleeping with him. It's like, it's like every time you look at Henry Cavill, I'm like, okay, guys. I'm sorry, Henry Cavill is a gorgeous hunk of meat, but that doesn't mean I want to sleep with him. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, my point is that it came out of left field, and I'm like, when has this ever been set up with a character that, as far as I know, has been the typical character that leans toward women? Yeah, like Iceman has always been the cool ladies' man. Yeah, exactly. Pun intended. Yeah, or it's like Tim Drake. Suddenly, it just showed up out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, and they made him black too. Like they're trying to make Tim Drake black too, which, like, suddenly race swapping characters that have been like a certain race for so long, it just kind of doesn't sit right with me. Unless it's if sometimes they'll be a little bit smart and pull like a multiverse kind of thing. Oh yeah, 100%. Or an adaptation. It's like I always tell people, whenever I encounter people who's pro race swapping, because I had an encounter with someone, I always tell them, okay, so by your logic, for diversity reasons, they could cast a white guy to play Black Panther. Oh, that's the catch-22 that always messes them up. Yeah. Granted, that would not work out, but my point is, if you're in favor of if they want to do White Wolf, that character. So they kind of did with Bucky, so I'm like, okay, that's pretty dope. Yeah, kind of. They kind of touched upon the White Wolf storyline with Falcon and Winter Soldier a little bit. But my opinion on race swapping is, if you get right actor for the right role, it's fine. Like Michael Clark Duncan is the Kingpin. I thought he was great. Yeah, and the guy they got for Gordon for the Batman, perfect. He's a perfect Gordon. And the thing about like Catwoman, honestly, like Catwoman is one of those things where it's like, they've been slowly but surely making Catwoman black over the years. And I'm kind of fine with it, honestly. Like, she plays the character well, so I could care less. Zoe Kravitz isn't the first black woman to play Catwoman. She's not even the second. She's the third. Yeah. Eartha Kitt, Halle Berry, then Zoe Kravitz. Yeah, and the only reason why Halle Berry is known as the worst one is because of the script. So it wasn't like her portrayal of it was kind of bad. Well, that was a very complicated. She was a good sport. She was a good sport about it. I love how she accepted her Razzie.
Yeah, she was like, "Thank you for giving me a
putting me in this piece of crap movie."
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, at least she acknowledges that it was a bad movie. But my point is that, let me put it this way: I would love to see Idris Elba as James Bond. I think he'd do a fantastic job as Bond.
The problem, I agree with you, except this should have happened 5 to 10 years ago.
Yeah,
the thing is, Idris Elba, he's kind of old, and he could probably maybe do 1 or 2 movies as Bond before he gets before he goes like, you gotta realize okay, I gotta the question is, Roger Moore is kind of like the example of a Bond who stayed on too long. I don't know, I feel like Idris Elba, he could probably, if he did a Bond movie now, he could do it, because Bond movies are very physical. It's a very physical role, and he could do it now and maybe a second one, but like after that you're kind of getting into Roger Moore in the 80s territory.
But yeah, exactly. I agree with you on that. But also, here's a very positive example of race swapping: Aquaman.
Young Justice?
No, in the movies.
Oh yeah, I think another factor to note is it all depends on how much people care about the character. Because Aquaman has always kind of been like the constant butt of jokes for like decades. Yeah, and now that Aquaman's cool now because you got Jason Momoa playing the role, and honestly, having like a Polynesian kind of infused moray culture in Aquaman just makes sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's fine.
Like that, infusing that kind of culture into Aquaman just makes perfect sense because they're like a seafaring people, and that kind of culture in Aquaman just makes sense.
And my favorite is that they changed the appearance of the guy in the comics to reflect Jason Momoa to the point where he has long hair, beard, tattoos, and I'm like, yes.
Well, they knew they had a good thing in the movies because like we finally cracked the code. How do we make people care about Aquaman? How do we it's like, and they even sidestepped the whole talk to fishes joke. They actually kind of made it like, okay, that's actually kind of cool. Like they actually made the whole talking to fish joke actually kind of cool. Like I love how every time someone tries to crack a talking to fish joke, she just glares at them and they shut up.
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, that's why I always tell people who don't like Zack Snyder, all your favorite versions of these characters in the movies were cast by Zack Snyder. He would not, let me put it this way, Warner Brothers would not have cast Jason Momoa to play Aquaman. I'm convinced of that.
Except Grant Gustin, I'm not Grant Gustin, but Ezra Miller is not my favorite Flash. Like he's not terrible. Zack Snyder definitely version better, but I'm gonna be happy when he gets recast.
Yeah, I think it's time to recast him, particularly in light of recent events. But
yeah,
I'm not so convinced on putting Grant Gustin in there. But that's
who do you think should be Flash?
That's actually a good question. I never thought about that.
Because if not Grant Gustin, then who?
Yeah, that's true. Who else? Because
John Wesley Shipp. Let's bring back John Wesley Shipp. Have him be old Jay Garrick.
Jay Garrick Flash. You could do.
He could do that. If you want to have a Jay Garrick as an old man, John Wesley Shipp would be perfect.
That would work. Right now, let me see. Who would actually be able to do a good Flash? Maybe who's a young-ish guy that could do well with the Flash?
Tom Holland.
That would be hilarious.
You know what's funny?
He talks fast anyway, so it works.
Tom Holland actually has the energy for the Flash. He would make a perfect Flash, but he's Spider-Man, so it's actually kind of a downgrade for him.
Yeah, that's kind. Although he's on the
speaking
Justice.
But also Spider-Man is like one of the top at Marvel. Like he's even above the Avengers, honestly. In some cases. So it's like he's a higher tier character than even the Avengers. So
yeah. So yeah, I would have said Tom Holland if it wasn't a downgrade. Yeah, exactly, because the Flash.
But strictly speaking, as an actor, Tom Holland would be perfect.
Yeah, because he has that. That's I agree with you. He has the energy character. Yeah. Particularly in like the way he talks about to the Avengers and like Infinity War. I'm like, yeah, you'd be fantastic as the Flash. I would have to say, if we're going with a young-ish guy to play the Flash, I mean, yeah, I see where people are going with the Grant Gustin because it's actually really hard to think of who else could adequately play the Flash. Yeah, I have no idea.
Like a lot of energy, like kind of has a lot of energy on screen. They got to be young.
Yeah, and who has a lot of energy and is young. Probably if I had to pick someone, actually it would be Tom Holland because he's like youngish and has the energy. So I mean, if somehow they can make that work, that he would be my choice.
Yeah, like honestly, I feel like Tom Holland was totally miscast for Uncharted. Like,
I didn't see the movie, but I heard it was terrible.
The thing is, Nathan Drake, you know, even if you look, there's a sequence in like I think it's Uncharted 2 or 3 where you have a young Nathan Drake, and even that Nathan Drake still is kind of more of a swarmy, wise but kind of character, whereas Tom Holland, he's too much of a jolly gee whiz, like, for example, Tom Holland would make a perfect Dick Grayson, if you want to get young Robin.
Yes. Could he pull off a Damian Wayne though?
No. Heck
yeah,
no.
I agree with you. No, because he's not dark enough to be Damian Wayne.
I could see him playing Tim Drake. He could do it. He could do a young Tim Drake. Like he'd be perfect for a young Tim Drake. Sorry, I'm just flooded with memories of Batman Forever, and like he had Chris O'Donnell. Like I liked him as Robin, but like they tried to like portray him as like 19, 20, kind of thing. But it looked like he was in late 20s, early 30s.
I'm still emotionally scarred from that movie, the Bat credit card. I'm going solo.
Oh, that's Batman and Robin. Batman Forever. Batman Forever actually has some substance to it. Also, hashtag release a Schumacher cut.
Yes, exactly. Well, I will go for that. Even if it's a horrible movie, I'm still gonna say release the blank cut, at least the Ayer cut.
Yeah, like honestly, if you look at some of the early versions of Snyder of the Suicide Squad, it actually was a lot darker. The problem is they released that freaking Queen trailer that everyone loved, and so they hired the people who did the trailer to recut the movie. Yeah,
so like yet another situation when Warner Brothers sabotaged a potentially good movie.
Like they basically they tried to give Suicide Squad the Edgar Wright treatment.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to give it like an Edgar Wright feel, like the music and whatnot. The problem is Edgar Wright does it with a purpose. Like you watch Baby Driver is a perfect example of how he treats every scene like a music video, integrating. Like, have you seen Baby Driver?
Yes, I have.
It is a beautiful movie. Like
I love
every sequence, they perfectly time the music with the action. It is such a good movie.
Yes, I love that movie.
I love Edgar Wright.
So back to your book. Let me ask you this: what's your favorite part about writing a comic book?
I'd say the world creation, like kind of just the brainstorming, coming up the characters, coming up the plot lines. Like just when I stumble upon something that really excites me, gets me that feeling, like kind of planning stuff out in my head. Like the writing is cool. Like actually sitting down and typing it out is great. But just the plotting of it, just like, oh, this is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. This is how I'm gonna connect it. Like thinking of these awesome moments in my head, how they play out. Kind of thing. Like for example, I like to throw in movie references or whatnot.
Love that. So what's it like writing something and then seeing it visualized in the art?
It's probably one of the greatest feelings ever. Like I still remember that time when I first held a comic book that I wrote that was actually published, like holding it in my hands. I can still remember that moment so clearly. Like it was kind of like a kind of thing. Exactly. Where it's like I was looking at it in awe. I was just thinking like, I did this. My thoughts made flesh. I mean, obviously I didn't go full Ed Gein and like, bind and, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. That's great. And it's definitely, it seems like it's one of those moments you're like, to see your words in pictures. It's like,
really surreal because you took something from your head and made it physical. It's kind of, it's very awe-inspiring to see like a year ago this was all in here, now it's in my hands, and now it's in other people's hands, and other people are liking it, and it's a very thrilling experience.
That's great. So let me ask you this. So what would you let me think of the way to phrase this question. In terms of, are there any specific like comic book characters and storylines that you read that like inspired you in the way you approach this and like the characters and such?
I'd probably say like kind of like the plot of Ghost in the Shell, at least the movie a little bit. And then also like The Matrix is also kind of a big one. Honestly, this book is really just really kind of like a big blender of like stuff and what I like to saw. Like the action is very Matrix inspired, you know, like the way the characters move, the way they jump about. I've always honestly growing up, I was such a huge Matrix fan. I'd watch the stuff over and over and over again. I even got to the point where I just watched specific scenes and study them. Like I'd watch them over and over again and like study the movements, like how they did this. Like for example, Neo is a kicker. Like if you kind of watch the movies, like he does punches, but he mostly favors his kicks. You know, that kind of stuff. Whereas Morpheus is more of a puncher. You know, like if you kind of watch stuff, Morpheus is more of a guy who uses his fists. You know, and whatnot.
That's great. Okay, so I gotta ask you this: as a Matrix fan, what do you think of the most recent Matrix movie? I kind of enjoyed it, but it's kind of funny. I watched it with my dad, and he approached it not having seen the other 3 movies. So he's like, "The heck is going on?"
So it's not a terrible movie. I mean, it breaks the lore 5 billion different ways. I feel like the way they handled it was very surface level. Like, I'll give the Wachowski siblings, or at least I guess Lana Wachowski was the one that she was the only one doing it. It's kind of telling when one of them drops out.
Yeah.
You know, like knowing what's behind the movie, like they're trying to go for a meta approach. Like literally, what they say in the movie is literally what was happening. Like Warner Bros. Like, hey, we're gonna make a Matrix sequel. Either you do it or we do it anyway. So Lana was like, F you, you know, I'm going to, you know, it's kind of, honestly, this film's kind of a middle finger to the studio. And I respect what he was trying to do. I respect the subtext he was trying to achieve. I just feel like he failed miserably at the execution, you know? I respect the attempt is basically the most charitable way I can say it.
Yeah, my problem with that movie is that, okay, so all of a sudden, Trinity has powers, even though she had no point. We never got any indication in the other 2 movies that she was another one. So I'm like, where is this coming from?
Yeah, and like, I don't really have a problem with Neo coming back. In fact, that was my headcanon. Like, literally, okay, you want to know the most hilarious thing? So in 2006, I wrote a fan fiction, fan fiction, and it's on fanfiction.net right now, called The Matrix Resurrections.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it's literally about a new person gets red pilled, and they eventually find out that Neo is alive in the Matrix, and they plugged him back in, and they have to find him. So, like, I predicted the plot and the name 15 years before it came out. Give me a freaking Oscar!
That is great. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Oh man.
Oh, like it's literally on fanfiction. Like I'll send you a link. I'll dig it up and I'll PM you the link so you can. I only got like a few chapters in before I abandoned it, but like you can see where I was heading with it. You know, like there's literally a scene where he's getting chased by an agent, and he goes to like this noodle place, and he's being served by a guy named Tom Anderson, which is supposed to be like the hint, you know, the foreshadowing. And it's like, oh, Tom Anderson, oh, he'll probably never amount to anything. Like the character thinks that, you know, it's like I dropped that seed, and like obviously that was where the story was gonna go. Oh my god,
that is like that's the greatest story I think I've ever heard on the show, right? Quite frankly, because that is fantastic.
Like I will literally send the fan fiction is hot trash, mind you. It's hot freaking trash. Like it's like post high school me, but like it's there and you'll see it. It's like, oh, this is from 2006. You know, it's like the difference between my story was like shortly after the movies. It was kind of like a continuation sequel, you know. It's just when I saw that title, I was like, oh, you know, like I was flabbergasted because like I instantly remembered like I wrote a fan fiction in 2006 with the title Matrix Resurrections. Like, where's my Oscar? Where's my Oscar?
Where's my paycheck, Warner Brothers?
Exactly.
That is
you know what? I should post. I should have like when that movie was hot. I should have posted on Twitter a link to that fan fiction and say, I wrote this in 2006. Where's my paycheck, Warner Brothers?
And you can watch. I guarantee you, people put in the comments, this is way better than the movie.
Probably.
Knowing what we got. But yeah, I always love finding other Matrix fans because I got into the franchise super late. I just recently, before the movie came out, I rewatched all three of them. And they're not movies that you can just do stuff while you're watching them. You have to actually engage because you miss vital plot points.
So question, I assume you've seen the trilogy. Have you seen the Animatrix?
I haven't seen that yet. I really plan to.
You need to watch it. And there also are some comics, Matrix comics. I haven't read them all, but a lot of them are pretty good.
Yeah.
And if you want to play Matrix video games, Path of Neo is actually pretty decent.
Path of Neo.
That one came out for PS2 and Xbox, so you can emulate it fairly easily.
Well, I do have my old Xbox 360, so there is that.
If it's backwards compatible, then you should be good.
I'll see it. Now, I did play the Unreal Engine demo, and the problem
I'm so mad it didn't come to PC.
Yeah, the issue with it is that you can't do anything. You're walking around a city. I'm like,
it's a demo.
Yeah, but still, it's in the Matrix. I'm just walking.
I'm hoping they make a new Matrix game. Like, honestly, I'm hoping once Harry Potter Legacy is done, Warner Brothers gets those people to make a Matrix game.
Yeah, because there's such potential in there for
like a Matrix MMO made perfect sense.
Yes.
The only thing that upsets me is if that game would have lasted a few years longer, it could have gone free to play, because that game would have been so perfect for a free to play model. Because like just the cosmetics and all that stuff you could have put in the game, except it died about a year or two before free to play became really popular.
Yeah,
and if that game had went free to play, it would probably still be around today.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. I also love how apparently it showed up as like the plot for like, I think it was Saints Row 4, where you're going into like a world and you have like superpowers. So I'm like, where is this from? I wonder.
Also, the one thing I do like about the Matrix Resurrections, it does make the MMO canon. Like I think from what I agree, there are lines in the movie that reference the MMO.
Oh, okay. Well, at least I did like the idea where he's making where like the Matrix was actually a game in this new world. You see like all the statues, and I'm like, I appreciate that.
The attempt, like they thought the ideas were good. Like the underlying, I'd say the foundation of the movie was pretty solid. Like but just everything, it was a house of cards built upon a very strong foundation. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. And see, yeah, I definitely agree. There were parts I really liked, like I said, but there were parts that I absolutely hated, like the Trinity thing, because it's like I get female empowerment, but at no point was this ever established in the lore. And why did she get power?
Like, you want female empowerment, do more stuff with Sati. You know, like you had Sati, who's literally like a god in the system. You could have had a rebirth Oracle, like the Oracle never technically died, but where is she? Basically, you had Sati take the Oracle role, have Sati merge with the code of the Oracle, and have her do stuff. You know,
I will say when she showed up in the movie, I was like, I remember you.
Yeah, Sati showing up made perfect sense. You know, because she's got, you know, kind of a god within the system. And the Merovingian scene, oh my god, like, just you had him be full boomer. You never go full boomer. And it just kind of stops the movie dead in its tracks. And they're like, oh, there's exiles here. Why are there exiles? I don't know, but let's fight them. And they had a fight scene with the exiles for no reason whatsoever, you know.
And I do feel that also Agent Smith was kind of tacked on to that movie, because I'm like, why are you coming back?
To be fair, from what I hear, they did want Hugo Weaving for that role. And honestly, if they would have had Hugo Weaving as that role, it would have made the movie so much better.
Yeah.
Because it would have been a ticking time bomb kind of thing. Because like you can tell they wrote it with Hugo Weaving playing the role in mind, because the shift was so sudden. Because if Hugo Weaving was playing that role, you know, it would have had like a sense of dread. Like, wait, Hugo Weaving and Agent Smith are playing together and they're being nice. Like, what's going on? And all of a sudden he remembers and he's like that. It would have hit that much harder. You know? Because it's a ticking time bomb at that point. It's kind of like what's the guy who directed Rear Window? Is the director? I can't remember his name. Rear Window, The Birds.
Hitchcock.
It would have been kind of like a Hitchcockian kind of, you know, ticking time bomb under the table. You know, that kind of suspense thing. You know, and that would have been great for the movie. It made it a lot more interesting. You know, when is he gonna go bad? Oh, he's gone bad. Oh, you know. Whereas with this one, it's just like, oh, he's Agent Smith. Instead of it being a twist no one cares about, it would have been a twist everyone saw coming, but are happy to see it happen.
Yeah, exactly. There's like so many. Yeah, exactly. Great ideas, poor execution. But anyway, before we wrap up, what I want you to do is give like a relatively brief, like sort of like a selling proposition on your book. Why should people buy your book?
Do you like samurai? Do you like cyberpunk? Do you like my book?
That's all we got to know. All right. Love that. And I 100% love when people go out and provide other options beyond Marvel and DC, because there are so many other options in comics besides reading a Superman book.
Yeah.
Plus, here's the good part: when it's a new creator, it's really easy to like get to jump on the story at day one, because it just started.
Yeah, so like for this one, it's for issue 2, but you can actually buy issue 1 as an add-on tier very easily for like an extra $5.
Fantastic! There you go.
I got my bases covered.
Exactly. I wish more people did that, honestly, because it's like because you're always going to encounter new people onto your projects. You want to make sure that they can fully like grasp and enjoy the product, right? Yeah, so I guess that's a good place to leave this one. All right, Nick, it was a pleasure having you on the show. You're always welcome.
Likewise.
And hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I will see you in the next one. Stay heroic, everyone. Bye-bye.